Okay. We're not quite there yet, though, right? We have to determine, is this actually simplified? Good. Okay. That's what we have to determine next, right? Okay. So just like before, right? What do? Well, we want to, so what I mean, you could factor the numerator if you really wanted to. You could. I don't think it's terrible to do. I mean, you would have to use the AC method, I'm guessing. Actually, no, I'm not guessing. I know you would have to do that. Right? You have 3 terms on top. The leading coefficient is not 1. Okay, or at least try the AC method. Okay. Now, what you would have next is we want to try the factor theorem. We want to use the factor theorem because we can get around factoring that way. So for the denominators, we need them to be x minus something, right? So this coefficient of 6, we have to somehow get that out of there. Can't just erase it, right? You know, we can't just do that. We can factor it out, though, and that's what I'm doing. Okay, so let me say that again. Right? What we want to do is we want to use the factor theorem. We want the coefficient of x here to be 1, not 6. But you can't just erase it. So what do? We factor it out. Right? When you factor, you put that factor in front. You divide to get what's left over. So that's why the 6 is gone. But here we have 1 over 6. And again, we don't want addition, we want minus. So I wrote this, so we write this as minus a negative. Okay. So this tells us that we can use the factor theorem. The thing is, though, we have to plug in, that is, negative 1 over 6 into the numerator. I mean, it's not terrible, but, you know, that's what you have to do. The second one is a little bit easier, but you have to factor out 6. Because just like over here, right, we want the coefficient of x to be 1. So we have to get the 6 out of there. Right? Just like over here, we want the coefficient of x to be 1. So we're going to factor out 6, and that's what we do. Right? When you take it out, you divide to get what's left over. So the 6 is gone, but we have to divide by 6, and we get 1 over 6. It's subtraction already, so that's good. So here, I'm just plugging in what we just did. Notice that we have 6 times this squared, which is why from here, when you pull it out, you get 6 squared, which is 36. So again, we have 6x plus 1 squared, right? So we have 6 times x plus 1 over 6 squared. But since it's squared, when we pull the 6 out, we get 36. Because 36 is 6 squared. Here we just have 6. And 36 times 6 is 216. So the minus I did over here. I probably should have done it over here, but that's okay. But I hope it makes sense how we got this to 216. I don't want to go too fast. Again, I'll just say it again just to be on the safe side. Right? We have 6x plus 1 squared. Okay, we have 6x plus 1. We get that's equal to 6 times x minus negative 1 over 6. But the whole thing is squared, right? So when we pull the 6 out in front, we're going to have 6 squared, which is 36. And this 6 that came out, 6 times this 36 is 216, which is 6 cubed. And plus becomes minus a negative. Again, I know I probably should have done minus a negative here, but hopefully you still get it. You understand that is what I'm doing? Now we can use the factor theorem. Namely, for the numerator, we have to check if negative 1 over 6 is a root and if 1 over 6 is a root of the numerator. Remember, to be a root, the polynomial must map it to 0. And that's what we're checking here. And by these calculations, right, you can go through them. Here we have 18 times 1 over 6 squared plus 17 times 1 over 6 plus 1. Well, 1 over 6 squared is 1 over 36. And 18 times 1 over 36, that's a half. 18 times 2 is 36. We have 17 over 6 plus 1. Again, I got a common denominator. I mean, you could do this in your calculator because the main point is you want to know, is this equal to 0 or not? And it turns out the answer is no. That tells you right away that this here, minus x minus 1 over 6, is not a root. Is not a factor, excuse me, that's what I meant to say, of the numerator. For this one, same idea, except instead of 1 over 6, we do negative 1 over 6. And that's what I'm plugging in. We have 18 times 1 over 36 minus 17 over 6, right? As you can see, 17 times negative a 6 plus 1. And again, same idea. You get a common denominator and you don't get 0. That's the main point. I mean, again, you could use a calculator if you wanted to. I mean, it's good to show some work. So I guess this step here you could probably skip. The main point is that you don't get 0. You get 0 or you don't get 0, excuse me. And since we don't get 0, x minus negative a 6 is not a factor of the numerator. So since we did not get 0 by the factor theorem, x minus 1 over 6 is not a factor of the numerator. And x minus negative 1 over 6, that's not a factor of the numerator either. Hence, this whole thing is simplified. That's what we get. Any questions on that? Okay, so for the next one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you try the next one here. Take about 5 minutes. Again, subtract it and simplify. Okay? I'm just going to mute my mic, so I'll be right back. Let me just stop this.